All right, class, so here's our intro to photosynthesis. So similar to what we did with cell respiration, I'm going to remind you what are we really trying to do with the process. We're going to look at a little summary reaction to get an idea of what do we have to put in, what do we get out of the process, and then I'm going to break down the couple of steps that we're going to see with photosynthesis. And then just like I told you before, there's an activity that has a little more detail on the process of photosynthesis. And then there's an activity that combines the two, cell respiration and photosynthesis, and shows you how they're connected. All right, so goal for photosynthesis is to make glucose. And I want to mention to you here, glucose, the idea with glucose is going to be a couple of things. I mean, sometimes with photosynthesis, you just see something that says, hey, photosynthesis makes sugars. So same thing, right? Like it technically makes a little sugar that it can put together and make glucose. So it doesn't matter. Sugar, glucose, same thing. And then also the idea that photosynthesis is used to make food, right? Because that's what the plants are using the majority of this glucose for, is food. All right, so that's our goal. And then remember that there's just kind of only a handful of things that would be using photosynthesis, right? We have prokaryotic cells called cyanobacteria that are photosynthetic, algae are photosynthetic, and then plants, right? So, I mean, ultimately, that's a lot of stuff on our planet, but categorically, there's just a few different things that can be doing this, right? So then here's our summary reaction for photosynthesis. CO2 plus H2O. And photosynthesis requires sunlight, right? So on our arrow here is typically where we see this. We will write light energy. So CO2 plus H2O, and we have to put in some light energy. And then out of that we get C6H12O6 plus oxygen plus water. All right, so we did all this before, right? CO2 is carbon dioxide, H2O is water, C6H12O6 is glucose, O2 oxygen. So we saw all that, same stuff, right? Now it's kind of backwards, right? If you remember the reaction for cellular respiration, the products here were the things on the left. They were the reactants for cellular respiration. And the products for cellular respiration are our reactants here, right? And then just like I told you before with the carbons, we need 6 carbons to make glucose. Those carbons are coming from this carbon and carbon dioxide, right? So there's still that connection of carbon and CO2 is the carbon in our glucose. Because, I mean, look at for a second, if you took the 6 carbons out of glucose, we're looking over here at our products. If you took the 6 carbons out of glucose, what do you have left? You have H2O. I mean, water's pretty plentiful on our planet, so water's not that hard to get. What's hard for a plant to get is carbon, right? So that's what it uses the CO2 for. It's a carbon source. And it's kind of the best way of thinking about what this CO2 is it's a carbon source for the plants to be able to make its own carbohydrates. Okay, and remember that this glucose, this carbohydrate, that's our goal for this reaction. Right? Before in cellular respiration, the goal was to make ATP. Now the goal is to make glucose, to make food. All right, so then our steps, there are just 2 here for photosynthesis. We get what's called the light-dependent reactions. So leave a little space. I'm going to come back and add a few things in between here. So leave some space. Light dependent reactions, and then the second part is called the Calvin cycle. Okay, so two steps, two sets of reactions for photosynthesis, light dependent reactions and the Calvin cycle. And then what I want to do for you here is just kind of make a little list of what do we have to use and what do we get from this, right? So here's what we've got to put in. And then here's a list of what we can make. Again, the activity is going to show you a little more detail of how we're doing it, but this is the basic idea. All right, so inputs. Got to have light, right? Sunlight, it's light dependent. We got to have sunlight to do this. Hey, we got to have water. Hey, those are really the only two things. Now, technically, if you look at this on a biochemical level, there's a million things we need. But just sort of generically, what's the plant going to need to be able to do the light-dependent reactions? It's light and it's H2O. Okay? And then what we're going to make from this is ATP. We're going to make this molecule called NADPH. We just use an abbreviation for it. NADPH. And then oxygen, O2. That's what we're going to make in the light reactions. Right, so a couple things with these before we move to Calvin cycle. One is on the make list you see ATP, and for whatever reason students can see that and think photosynthesis is to make ATP. Well, we've done it a million times, right? What's photosynthesis for? To make glucose. In our summary reaction, here's our goal, glucose, not ATP. Okay, do we make ATP in photosynthesis? Yes, it's right here. It's on our list. But that's not why we're doing photosynthesis. All right, so that's our inputs and what we're making with light-dependent reactions. Notice we don't see any carbon dioxide. We don't see any glucose, right? So a couple of things that are important are not part of light-dependent reactions. Right? Calvin cycle, inputs, and then what we make. We need CO2, ATP, and NADPH. So we need those three inputs, CO2, ATP, NADPH. And then what we're making is our glucose, C6H12O6. Right, so there's where our goal product comes in. Okay, and then one last connection I want to make here. Hopefully you kind of see this and make this connection. You know, this plant, the CO2 is coming from the atmosphere, right? So the ATP and the NADPH that we need, well, where can we get that from? Well, we made those up here. Right? So the ATP and the NADPH that we make in the light-dependent reactions, we use it down here. That's why when you think photosynthesis purpose is to make ATP, that's wrong because yes, we make it, but look, in the next step, we use it all. So we're not generating any surplus ATP with photosynthesis, right? This is our goal. Right, that's the goal we're trying to get to, and we can make that in the Calvin cycle. All right, so there's an intro to photosynthesis for you heading into the lecture activities.